Welcome to Alpha Team Training Session 2.
This session is all about how to create great small groups on Alpha.
Alpha is so much more than just inviting people to watch a video. It's about creating a space for people to ask questions, share their thoughts, and explore life's biggest questions in a safe and non-threatening way.
Each talk looks at a different aspect of the Christian faith, and then the small groups offer guests the opportunity to share what they believe, ask questions, and have a conversation.
Now remember, every Alpha has food, a talk, discussion, and fun.
I find it helpful to think of our roles as if we're hosting a party. Imagine you're having friends around to your house. What would you do? Well, you'd be there before the guests arrive and prepare everything. And when they arrive, you'd greet them, give them some food and drinks, and introduce them to other people. And that's the same on Alpha. You're there to make people feel welcome. That's why Alpha always starts with small groups eating food together. It allows people to chat and get to know each other.
The perfect size for a small group is 12 people. So 2 hosts, 2 helpers, and around 8 guests.
So when the guests arrive, welcome them and get the conversation going. Keep it fun and keep it light. Avoid talking about any deep or heavy topics at this point.
Then, after food, someone will welcome everyone to Alpha and give a brief introduction. Then from there might be a bit of worship, maybe 1 or 2 songs. Now, this might feel a bit awkward for some of the guests, so it's important to remind them that they don't have to join in. But it's actually funny how by the end, many people actually say they really enjoy it.
Next, the video will start. Each session on Alpha includes a short talk about the Christian faith. They're about 20 minutes long, and in the Alpha Youth series, there's 3 breaks for discussion.
Yeah, the first break is an icebreaker question that is designed to get people talking. Then the next 2 breaks give an opportunity to dive deeper into the content. A question will come up on the screen, followed by a 1-minute montage of people from around the world sharing their answers. These interviews are there to help spark conversation within your group. Then the question comes back up, and that's when you should press pause, turn to your group, and ask them what they think.
We've prepared a guide to help you with the discussion during those 3 breaks. There's also included some additional questions that help you facilitate a 10 to 15-minute discussion after the episode is done. You can ask your leader about getting a hold of those.
Discussion is such an important part of Alpha. In the small group, people will get to say exactly what they think, to question everything, to discuss it, and to work things out for themselves.
Hey guys, it's me, Ben. I'm back. You doing all right? Staying hydrated? I hope so. I'm staying hydrated. Tim, George, are you hydrated? I wasn't convinced there. Georgie's my friend from England, by the way. She's great. Guys, I wanted to come back and let you know I'm still with you. I'm on the journey with you. And also, I wanted to tell you about the jobs of hosts and helpers. Every small group should have at least 1 host and 1 helper, and if possible, 2 of each. This is where you come in. Now, this language of host and helper, rather than simply small group leader, is really important because on Alpha, it's less about being a leader in the small group and more about hosting a conversation and helping others feel welcomed and included. So what's the difference between a host and a helper? Well, let me explain. If you're the host, you're the one who facilitates the small group discussion. If you're the helper, you're there to help with anything that might make the experience even better. When it comes to the discussion time, hosts facilitate the discussion, and helpers should mostly stay quiet. This is important. I find this makes being a small group helper easier in some ways and harder in others. Now, the part that's hard for me is staying mostly silent during the discussion because I love to talk, but helpers aren't really supposed to do much talking. But in some ways it's easier because instead of putting my energy into facilitating the discussion, I can put my energy into being totally present, praying silently during the discussion, and listening as well as possible. There are 2 reasons why we encourage helpers to stay quiet. One is that by staying quiet, we're showing people it's okay if they would prefer to stay quiet. And this is really important for some people. We don't want to force anyone to share if they don't want to. And the second reason is that by staying quiet as a helper, we're allowing more time for those who do want to talk more. Let's take a quick break right here and take a few minutes right now and talk about the roles of hosts and helpers. What can hosts and helpers do to make people's Alpha experience as meaningful as possible? Take a couple minutes and talk about it. Go.
When it comes to hosting a small group, it's not an exact science. It's more like an art, and you're never going to be perfect at it.
Yeah, so to help you out, we've narrowed down the job of hosts and helpers to 3 things. Hosts and helpers love, hosts and helpers listen, and hosts and helpers laugh.
The first is love.
I think it's all about love and friendship and having fun. It's just people and however you deal with people. And you want to get people to feel that they can trust you, that you like them. And I think that's the most important thing, that you actually want to make friends with these people. You want to get to know them and love them.
Yeah, I think that the key thing for the hosts, the helpers, is that they like people, they love people, and that they're genuinely interested in them and genuinely interested in what they have to say. Because it's, in the end of the day, it's all about respect. If you respect them, even if you disagree with them, somebody comes as an atheist, but you respect their right to hold their views and you're interested in what they have to say, then they'll talk. And the more they talk, and the more people listen with the respect, you get a whole atmosphere in the small group is marked by respect.
The Alpha Youth series is 13 sessions, and it's usually run over about 9 weeks. It's crazy how on week 1, you can feel like you have nothing in common with your guests, but by week 9, you're such good friends.
Now, some small groups can feel like a total train wreck. The first few weeks might have a few awkward moments, but don't let that get you discouraged or cause you to want to quit. It's all part of the process, and there's no way to fast forward openness and friendship.
So much of the guest experience is defined by the small group host and helper. We started with love because that is the #1 thing we want people to experience. When you think about what it means to be a host or helper, remember, it's about loving the guests with kindness and respect.
So the first key to a great alpha small group is love, and the second is listen. Now, I know this might be a bit counterintuitive when you're hosting or helping a group on Alpha, because you quite often think, well, people are coming with their questions, and as a leader, it's my job to give them the answers. That might be the case in other contexts, but it's not on Alpha.
The purpose of a small group on Alpha is to love people, not win arguments. So it's important that you listen and give people time to figure out what they think. For a lot of people, they will have never asked these questions, and if you do all the talking, you're taking that opportunity away from them.
So our job is to facilitate discussion between the guests. The goal is conversation.
Yeah, wow, right? Guys, so true. Conversation is the goal. That's what we want. Wow, and Tim's beard? I love the beard. I gotta remember later when I see Tim and he's not frozen, like I don't think they can hear things when they're frozen. Maybe it's like, maybe they can. Tim, I love your beard. Yeah, I'll tell him later too, just to make sure he knows. Guys, what I wanna do now is I wanna show you a picture that captures the way a great small group discussion on Alpha should feel like. It's a diorama. Been working on it with the team here. Okay, check this out. Okay, yeah. Oh yeah, too good. You seeing this, guys? Wait, let me just get it. Is that good? All right. What we have here is a very typical small group on Alpha in the city. Let me introduce you to the group. Over here we've got Donatello, Stone Cold Steve, Bruce, Rogue, Elsa, Barbie, Jesse, Frodo, Finn, Mr. Potato Head, and he actually came with his friend Anakin. We'll use these gentlemen and ladies and this dot to show you what a healthy group discussion should look like. This is the goal. It's balanced. It's going back and forth. Everyone gets a chance to talk if they want to. The hosts are doing a good job of engaging people, and everyone feels free to share their ideas in an honest and respectful way. Now we want to show you a few examples of what we don't want. Bad example number 1, the host or helper doing all the talking. Jessie is the host, and she loves talking. But if she is the only one talking, this isn't good for discussion. It might be good for like a YouTube vlog, but not an Alpha small group. Bad example number 2. This is Mr. Potato Head, and he's got stories to share and lots of opinions, but he isn't leaving time for anyone else to talk. This is actually a really common problem. If there is someone who seems to be dominating the conversation, it can stop others from joining in. In a situation like this, I try to connect with the person before or after the discussion time. Remind them that the goal of the small group is to get lots of people talking, and ask for their help in making space for others to share. Bad example number 3. Donatello and Frodo are getting into a really deep conversation, but everyone else is left out. Or even worse, bad example number 4, Bruce and Barbie are getting into a debate. Bruce says, "Listen, Barbie, I think your idea is stupid." Well, I think you're stupid. And even though it seems like Bruce has a tough exterior, he's actually got a really soft heart. And so because he was a bit hurt, he decided not to come back to Alpha the next week. This is the ultimate goal, balanced discussion. People feel safe to share their ideas, and people feel safe to be quiet. No one's getting shut down. Hosts and helpers are helping make things happen. This is the goal. This is great discussion. And each of us play a big part in making this happen. Okay, Georgie and Tim are gonna unpack a bit more of how to host a great discussion, but before we throw it back to them, let's pause and take a few minutes to think about it for ourselves. For example, ask yourselves, what are you gonna do when your group doesn't connect with the first question? Or, what are you gonna do to keep the conversation going after the first question if everybody's answer is really quick? Or, how will you engage someone who is slower to talk? And then another really common challenge is, how will you deal with someone who's talking too much? The big question is, what can hosts and helpers do to facilitate open, honest, and respectful conversations? Actually, now that I think about it, that might be too many questions to fit on the screen for the discussion. Is that too many?
I think we can fit them all.
Yeah, okay, we're gonna fit them all. Perfect. Guys, I'll leave it with you. Say bye to the team here. Bye, guys. See ya. Okay.
The Alpha Youth series has discussion breaks built in. Now we're going to share with you our 6 best tips for facilitating discussion.
Tip number 1, ask open-ended questions. For example, in session 2, Who is Jesus? Instead of asking a closed yes or no question like,
Do you think Jesus is God?
you could ask,
Who do you think Jesus is?
or,
Imagine, what do you think it would have been like to be around Jesus?
One of the ways I get ready before an alpha is to take a few moments to look over the discussion questions for that session. And sometimes I'll think of 1 or 2 of my own. Tip number 2, be encouraging. Some guests will be worried about looking stupid or getting tongue-tied, so if they're brave enough to speak,
If I'm honest, sometimes I wonder if this whole thing was made up.
encourage them and thank them for sharing.
Thanks for sharing, Potato. What does everyone else think?
By listening well, by being kind and encouraging, you set the stage to have great conversations.
3, be yourself. Being yourself is the best thing you can do for the group. If you don't know the answer to a question, don't pretend you do. Simply say,
I don't know.
and maybe add,
Let me look into it. I'll get back to you next week.
people are drawn to authenticity.
Tip number 4, don't answer all the questions. If someone asks a question, even if you know the answer, open it up to the whole group by saying,
That's a great question. What does everyone else think?
there are a couple of exceptions, however. If someone asks a specific question like,
How many gospels are there?
you don't need to say,
What does everyone else think?
if no one else jumps in and you know the answer, you can tell them there's 4. In the same way, if someone asks,
Where are the toilets?
you don't have to say,
That's a great question. What does everyone else think?
just tell them. And when the group has got to know each other a little bit better, particularly after the Alpha weekend, you might want to share some more of your opinions. But in the beginning, make sure the group do most of the sharing.
Number 5, don't be afraid of silence.
Research suggests that people need around 6 seconds of thinking time before answering a question, especially when thinking about such deep issues. Sometimes people need to digest and think about an idea, and we can cut that off if we jump in too quickly.
Yeah, this one can be hard. When you lead a small group and there are moments of silence, you might literally have to say to yourself, silence is okay. It's okay. 6 seconds. It's okay. Now, obviously too much silence could become awkward.
Totally. So if your question doesn't draw out a response, maybe think about rephrasing it.
And that brings us to tip number 6, rephrase the question. People process questions in different ways. Some people will be able to respond immediately with the first thought that comes to mind, whereas others may need time to reflect and process the question. For example, some people will love the question,
What do you think forgiveness means?
whereas others will respond better to,
Have you ever had to forgive someone? How did that feel? Let's talk about it.
And those are our 6 tips. So as hosts and helpers, we love people. We listen to what they have to say. And then the third thing is we laugh. Alpha is supposed to be low-key, relaxed, and fun.
Yeah, it's like what we were saying earlier, that being a host and helper on Alpha is like hosting a party. Laughter helps people open up and build friendships. Now that's why we have icebreaker questions at the start of each episode. My favorite is on episode 5, what's your favorite superpower?
I really like the one on episode 13, what's your most embarrassing moment? Because there's always some fun stories from that one.
Now, creating this kind of atmosphere starts on the very first week. And to be honest, the first few weeks of discussion can be a bit awkward. This might be the first time a lot of the guests are talking about things like faith in God, so we should ease into it, because it takes time for the group to get into the flow of conversation.
After a few weeks, though, there's a good chance that the conversation will be flowing really well. And then the challenge might be to keep people on topic. This is a good problem to have. Just try and find the balance between keeping it fun and keeping it focused.
Okay, this is a great spot to pause and take all this knowledge for a test drive. Let's call this your very own small group discussion simulation scenario. This is what I want you to do. Get into groups of 6 to 8 people and designate someone to be the host and someone to be the helper. And then give everyone else in the group an assigned character to play, like the questioner, the negative commentator, someone who's always off topic, someone who's highly religious, and then maybe even someone who can't sit still. And then pick a non-religious topic, like what's the best fast food place, or what new holiday should be started, and then talk about it as a group. Hosts should ask the group what they think or how they feel about the topic, and then practice responding with more questions and simple, encouraging comments. And let the group express their opinions without correcting, challenging, or insulting them. And then debrief. Talk about the simulation when you're done. Ask yourselves what will be the most challenging about hosting a small group. What will help small group hosts be better facilitators? And all the way through, try to be imagining what it'll be like for people who are guests for the very first time. Okay, give it a try.
The final thing that small group hosts and helpers do is pray. Everything we do on Alpha needs to be built on a platform of prayer.
Have you ever received a remote control car or something like that for Christmas? You were so excited to play with it. You go to open it up and you go to turn it on and realize there's no batteries. All that potential fun turns to pain and disappointment.
Prayer is the power source of Alpha. Alpha is exciting, it's amazing, it's life-changing, but only when it's powered by prayer. It's when we pray that God's power shows up through Alpha. He changes lives, miracles happen, and guests encounter Jesus. Things happen that only God could do.
So the best alphas always have teams of people praying behind the scenes, and helpers and hosts praying throughout the week. But prayer also shows up a few times for the guests.
When it comes to prayer, we introduce it thoughtfully to the guest. So we don't pray from the front, we don't say a prayer before food, and we don't close each session in prayer, except for a few intentional moments.
Yeah, like at the end of episode 4, How Can I Have Faith? There's an opportunity for anyone who wants to just say a simple, silent prayer, inviting Jesus to come into their life. For some people, this may be an important moment in their journey, and for others, it might be a bit early. Then in the session, How and Why Do I Pray? We look at the subject of prayer in more depth, touching on helpful ways to start praying if people would like to.
Prayer is best introduced in small groups. After the session on prayer, the host may want to finish the discussion with a short, simple prayer of thanks.
Then in the weeks that follow, you could ask if anyone has anything they'd like prayer for, and allow for space for guests to pray out loud if they'd like to.
Some groups might reach this point earlier than others, but it's important that every group has had the opportunity to pray before the 12th episode, Does God Heal Today? In this episode, everyone's given the opportunity to pray and be prayed for.
Now, the Alpha Weekend is a key time for prayer ministry and creates time and space for guests to receive prayer if they'd like to. The entire next session is on prayer and the Alpha Weekend.
There's a real adventure ahead of you. Hosting a small group on Alpha is not without its challenges, but it's also one of the most amazing things we can do. I learned so much as I listened to guests open up, be real, and begin to encounter God. It's all such a privilege.
Yeah, I'm always nervous about being a small group leader, but then I remind myself, it's God that changes lives. We get to show up, be available, and be a friend. God loves to work through ordinary people who feel nervous and unqualified, but are willing to show up and help.
We're praying for you as you encounter bizarre questions, awkward silences, and stunning stories. You're going to do great. Keep one ear glued to the guest and the other ear tuned to Jesus. It's not the words that you share, but the way you listen that will make all the difference.
So good. Good one, guys. Guys, I wanted to interrupt one last time before we end this thing, because I thought it would be worth mentioning one more important thing that hosts and helpers do. We invite people. None of this preparation matters if no one comes to Alpha, and no one will come if they haven't been invited. Why don't you take a moment right now to think about who you could invite? And we don't have to feel the pressure to make people come, but we can invite them. You may even want to offer them a ride or say you'll meet them there. And when you think of someone you could invite, say a prayer, invite them, and then leave the results to God. Okay, I think we can end this thing now. Let's cue the music. Okay, guys, see ya.